So I want to give you a different perspective on creativity. If you ask 1,000 people what is creativity, you're going to get 1,000 different answers, all of which would be correct. But I'm willing to bet that very few, if any, would actually include the word compassion in their answer. So to begin, I actually want to practice just a small exercise, very short. I want everybody to please close your eyes. Please close your eyes. I want you to think back, as far back as you can, to the earliest memory that you have of playing as a kid. It might be make-believe or dress up, or maybe it's a favorite toy. But go back to the very earliest idea you can. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a superhero. And I wanted to use my special powers to save people, to help people from certain catastrophe. And yes, I wanted to play with a monkey. I do have to say, however, that a chimpanzee is not a monkey, it's actually an ape. Chimpanzees do not like to be called monkeys. Granted, we're all primates, right? But chimpanzees are apes. So my apologies to any chimpanzees in the room and chimpanzees that might watch this online later. Yes, we're apes. So I would try to fly around the house, but obviously I didn't have these kind of special powers. And I figured eventually I would either find special powers, I would discover my special powers, or maybe those special powers would discover me. But one thing I could certainly do for myself, and that is make my own costume, because as we know, every superhero makes their own costume. So my dad had a t-shirt that came down to my knees, and I would put a belt, and I had pajamas, because all superheroes look like they're wearing their pajamas anyway. And I was missing a critical piece, and that's where my mom came in. My mom grabbed a bath towel, and the short end, she would safety pin around my neck, and then I had a cape. And that was a special power. I couldn't stay in the air for very long, but from the bed to the floor was just enough that I was midair, and that was close. And so I would practice, not jumping off the bed, mind you, but I would just practice for special powers. And important thing, of course, is the superhero pose. And I tried to figure out which exactly would be the superhero pose. Well, time, grow up a little bit, not too much, obviously. And of all the toys that I had, my Legos were absolutely my favorite, because then I could make every toy that I wanted with my Legos. And I had two older brothers, my brother Tony, who's 6 years older than me, and then my brother Matt, who's 2 years older than Tony. So we would kind of play with Legos together, which was great. It was a lot of fun. Now, my brother Tony especially, very talented when it comes to Legos at 11 years old. He was very into Formula One Indy race cars, and his designs were so intricate, he would choose the Lego colors, right, to actually make the design of the Formula One race car. And to me, this was like technology. This is so innovative as a kid. That was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. So this particular night, I remember going to bed. Mom and Dad sent me to bed, but of course I wouldn't go to sleep. After about 5 minutes or so, I would just climb out of bed, and I would get my Legos back out, and I would play with my Legos. And till late hours, and eventually, of course, I'd just pass out and I would just fall asleep. One Saturday morning, I woke up with a horrible Lego hangover, and picking the Legos off of my face, and so I go into the family room, Saturday morning cartoons, which for me, of course, is superhero training videos, right? And when I walk into the room, there are these two Lego Formula One cars, and one's kind of on the other one, and then there's this piece, like the spoiler, I guess, and then there's a wheel and a couple of other pieces, and it's just pretty interesting. And my brothers come out, they sleep in the same room. My brother Matt, he's just limping a little bit, and he's feeling really hurt, so my brother Tony is kind of helping him along, and he's like, "I'm really sorry, man, I'm totally sorry." And I just looked at him, and I'm like, what did you do to Matt? And Matt says, "Well, last night, we got in our shrinking machine, and we shrank And so we got into the cars and we were driving around, and the funny thing is Tony just cut me right off, and I just ran right into the back end of Tony. And I said, come on, that's impossible. And they said, no, really? And I'm like, it's impossible. Neither of you guys have driver's licenses yet. But I said, where did you get the shrinking machine? And I knew there was no such thing as a shrinking machine, but I didn't necessarily want to accept the fact that there wasn't a shrinking machine, because this could possibly be my superpower that I could then go out and use and start saving people from certain catastrophe. Well, I can't. My brother Matt said, I can't shrink you. And I was like, come on, you shrank Tony. No, I can't shrink you because you're too young. Oh man, it's the bummer when you're a kid. You're always too young. So that's fine. Okay, but when I get to be your age, you're going to shrink me, and you better promise. And Matt, okay, I promise. We'll totally shrink you. Well, that still hasn't happened yet, and I hold it to him every time I see him, every holiday, and I ask him, when are we going to shrink? So, but my point really through all of this is that when we play, this is where we begin to get really creative. And as we get older, the way that we play grows up with us, right? I've been working and studying with the psychologist, Dr. Howard Teicht, for the last few years on the dynamics and challenges in creative teams. When people in teams work on a cause or work for a cause, and they detach themselves from ego and expectations, you know, they really do perform at their best. Now, it's important to say also that these creative moments that happen within teams, they come in big bangs and they also come in small bangs. And sometimes there's a lot of space in between. And that space is where we discover learning. And that's where our play and our creativity becomes a bit more sophisticated. Now, have you ever experienced anything called creative block? I've been a designer for over 15 years, and I get creative block plenty of times, right? So I look to those spaces to actually learn and find ideas, new creative spaces. Maybe it's music, maybe it's books, maybe it's TED Talks, right? And maybe I just need to reach out to a few friends and just have a conversation. And it's in these ideas that we find a different perspective to creativity, and over time we discover that we're using creativity to solve problems. Now, empathy, which is an understanding for people and how they interact and how they enjoy experiences. Empathy is a great creative tool to understand how people connect, to develop creative solutions that connect with people. But compassion is a value multiplier over empathy. Now, again, what is creativity? You need to design your own answer for that question. You need to discover for yourself what creativity means in your life and consider finding the compassion in it. Until you find your own answer, you're more than welcome to borrow mine. Creativity is the desire to witness the impossible. It's the audacity to challenge everything we believe in, and the courage to be transformed by everything we learn. But it's also the compassion to make a difference for others. I believe that we are all creative, that we are born with design minds and a natural desire, a real drive to solve problems and make a difference for people. When we get creative together, amazing things happen, and they can happen quickly. They're meaningful and much more lasting, long-lasting. Now remember, let's think about this. The kid that you were thinking of in the beginning of the presentation, imagine that kid now playing with the tools and the toys that are available now. What would your superpowers be? What would you do with those superpowers? invest your creativity in compassion. There's one thing I feel strongly about that I really truly believe is the place where we belong, where we're meant to be, is where our great passions and a great hunger in the world meet. Now, it's not impossible. Discover your compassion. Be courageous and compassionate to be your superhero. You're not going to need a cape, but you should definitely practice your pose. Thank you very much for listening.